What is it about the basic task of staying alive every day that draws us in? I'm not talking about the existential question of which frozen pizza to make for dinner, I'm thinking more baseline. Today I'm talking about those types of games that make doing the most basic tasks like gathering food, water, and preparing shelter the core of their gameplay. If you look at the Steam page for survival games, there's a multitude of different types and genres, ranging from realistic simulation survivals, to post-apocalyptic survivals, to horror survivals, and many, many more. Some people seem to really like these, and some quite the opposite. So let's step into the virtual wilderness and take a look at a few different games, analyze their different survival aspects, and try to answer the question of why we like survival games. So to start, we should figure out what exactly makes a survival game, well, a survival game. Obviously the challenge is to simply stay alive, and that's fair, but I think we can be more descriptive than that. Genre aside, I think survival games generally boil down to anything that emphasizes resource management, has crafting or building elements, and most have some kind of mechanic that simulate basic human needs, be that health, stamina, hunger, thirst, etc. And these can range from being very basic surface level stuff to extremely in-depth, sometimes bordering on unforgiving. Moreover, they all usually have some kind of environmental hazards, be that the living dead, some kind of supernatural force, or simply the harsh elements of the world around us. On that note, these types of games usually have a vast landscape to explore while scavenging for resources, which I think is one of the primary factors of why people like these games. So why exactly do we like these games? Well, remember when you were young and you imagined yourself as an explorer or an adventurer? In a way, survival games bring back that kind of childlike wonder. That sense of mystery and adventure can really compel people to seek out the less trodden areas and really push themselves to test their survival skills. We get to be resourceful heroes in dangerous worlds, building structures, creating our own rules, and exploring a vast environment with things to discover around every corner. I think 2014's The Forest does this pretty well. In this game, you take the role of the dad character. After a plane crash, your son is abducted by a mysterious cannibal, and you have to save him. But to do that, you'll have to survive long enough to get to him. That means you have to hunt for food, boil your own water, and gather resources for shelter to keep the horrors of the island away. This game does a great job at putting you in the shoes of someone who just got dumped in the middle of nowhere with only your survival skills to depend on. You have to manage your hunger, thirst, and you have to sleep to maintain your energy. The crafting system is pretty good as well. You can combine things you find in the wilderness to create tools and weapons to help you survive better. While the building can be a bit goofy, that's also pretty rewarding too. You can build a vast variety of cool structures as well as traps for the enemies. Exploring many of the caves and unraveling the mystery of the creatures that inhabit the island, and figuring out why they kidnapped your son pushes the player to keep going. The winding maze-like caves are just begging to be explored. Sure, they're kind of terrifying, but they're also kind of cool and thrilling. I think naturally our brains like the feeling of exploring things like that. The game overall is a bit janky, but the bits that it does well, it does really well. Just look at that view. The day-to-day tasks that we typically don't think anything of take on a whole different meaning when doing them becomes a life or death situation. The difficulty of these is part of the appeal. When we finally complete that task, it makes us feel like we can overcome the odds and survive these situations. Think of going camping. Sure, it's not convenient, but the added difficulty of simple tasks like cooking food become an almost hallmark feature of these kinds of things. A game that I think embodies these concepts very well is The Long Dark. In this game, oftentimes it's not an external foe that's a danger to your survival. Sometimes it's the elements themselves. The Long Dark presents a unique survival experience where not only must you manage your resources, you have to be able to adapt to each situation. Each choice could mean the difference between life and a freezing cold death. The cold isn't the only thing to worry about though. The local wildlife and the constant struggle for food and water are also more than capable of killing you. It really simulates struggling to survive in a harsh environment better than most games out there, making the simple task of finding a safe, warm place to sleep a difficult experience. This game makes you weigh your options. Is the risk of dying of hypothermia worth going out into the blizzard? If not, you might just starve to death. Time is a resource as much as food or water. The time and the calories that it took you to break down some branches could have been spent hunting for food or scavenging for warm clothes. These worlds can be beautiful, or terrifyingly beautiful. Oftentimes I found myself stopping to smell the flowers, so to speak. Even when danger looms just over the horizon, sometimes you'll catch a beautiful shot of a scenic landscape, and you just have to take a moment to appreciate the beauty of this place that you've stumbled upon. The solitude and the peace and calm that comes with it can be worth it even for a moment to seek out these quiet corners of the wilderness. Another part of survival games that I think we enjoy is the unique feeling of accomplishment that we get. There's something really satisfying about gathering resources, crafting tools, and building little virtual sanctuaries. Sure, we might fail miserably at first, spending countless hours aimlessly wandering around, but when you finally craft that masterpiece of a shelter, or craft a high-end weapon, there's a satisfaction like no other. Something like Terraria or 7 Days to Die, where grinding out the top level gear feels really rewarding. There's something about that progression that keeps people coming back, and the increased emphasis on building can lead to people making very intricate structures, sparking creativity, and always encouraging players to come back to create something new. I've already talked at length about Project Zomboid, but most of what I said still holds true and applies here. The game is still one of the best survival simulators on the market, and really is a good showcase of these ideas. Everything you do in the game feels earned. It's a tough game and one mistake could spell your end, but it's also so rewarding, finding good gear, increasing your skills, or just building a really cool base. If you haven't played the game yet or seen my review, you should definitely do those things. Conversely, you could say the opposite of most of these points. Some view these things as an endless list of chores to do. If your game mechanics aren't immersive or interesting, or if the map is bland and lifeless, then these tasks quickly grow tiresome rather than rewarding. It can feel like you're endlessly grinding away at uninteresting tasks in order to achieve the bare minimum. The difficulty can be alienating. In general, these games are difficult starting out. While they do get easier, the early parts are a learning curve, and that can sometimes feel like a slog. That can be difficult from a development standpoint to balance. Too easy, and your game doesn't feel survivally enough, and too difficult and people won't want to play it. Some people don't like the open-ended feel of these types of games. They'd prefer a more structured game that puts you on a linear path where you can just kick back and enjoy the ride rather than coming up with your own fun. And both are totally valid viewpoints to have. A common problem I've seen with these games is that once your basic needs have been met, there's often a boredom that sets in. When you've made that fortress-like structure and have enough food and water to supply a small village, where do you go from there? Well, most people turn to creating works of art. Something like Terraria or Minecraft, where you have endless freedom and creativity to build your own objectives. You can create glorious monuments to human tenacity, you've survived the worst this world can throw at you, and to prove that, you've constructed this amazing shelter, or a statue to commemorate the occasion. Or sometimes it's a giant monolith that looks suspiciously like a cock. Checkmate, Egyptians, you might have fancy geometry, but I've got a giant dick looming over my buddy's base. These kinds of games give a unique and thrilling perspective of the wilderness and can really make you appreciate the world around you, its beauty, and also its ferocity. The challenge of them brings out a specific mindset in people, a tenacity that this game or its world won't beat you. So whether it be the sense of adventure from exploring the world, or the accomplishment from persevering through insurmountable odds, or even the satisfaction of building something incredible in-game, survival games continue to captivate people and are a reminder that the possibilities are endless and that new adventures are often just around the corner. So get out there and take on the world. Hey, thanks for watching this. If you enjoyed it and you want to see more stuff like this, liking the video and subscribing helps the channel grow, and I would personally really appreciate it. I hope it brought up some interesting points and maybe made for an interesting discussion. What do you guys think? What makes you want to play survival games? Or if you're not a fan of them, what about them do you typically not like? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.